Hello everyone, this is Rani from AIML department. Today I am here to explain the topic about exception handling in Java programming language. So exception, what is an exception? How we'll handle the exception? So exception is nothing but it is an error. We are calling exception as an error. Before learning the difference between error and the exception, error is what is an error and what the different types of errors we are having. Error is nothing but it is an illegal operation performed by the user. So whenever they are performing the illegal operation on a program, it will result in the abnormal working of the program. So that abnormal working of the program, we are calling it as an error. The exception is nothing but when an abnormal condition that is occurred in a program, the normal flow of the execution will be stopped there itself. That is nothing but exception. The both are errors. We can handle the errors by using exceptions. So what are the different types of errors we are having? We have different types of errors. One is runtime error, one is compile time error, another thing is logical error. Runtime error is nothing but that are detected during the execution of the program, that is compiled at runtime. So whatever the runtime error that is executed during the runtime, that will be handled by the Java virtual machine. While that is detected while the program is running, that we are calling it as a runtime error. That is nothing but dynamic error. And next is a compile time error. Compile time error is nothing but whenever the user doing any mistake, incorrect syntax, or any missing semicolon in the statement, or any missing brackets, if the class is not found in a program, that type of error will be handled by the compiler. So these type of errors are detected by the Java compiler. So we call these type of errors as a compile time error. Next is a logical error. Logical error is nothing but when your program compiles and execute everything, but it will result in the wrong result, incorrect results. The code will be right, everything will be right, but whatever the expected output we are expecting will not get that output. It will result in the wrong output. So the logic will be missed in the program. That type of error we are calling it as a logical error. So what is an error? What are the different types of error? This is the basic things. Runtime, compile time, and logical error. Next, what is an exception? Exception is also nothing but error. But this exception is nothing but it is an abnormal condition in the Java program. In Java, exception is it is an event that disrupts the normal flow of the program. It is an object which is thrown at runtime. That is nothing but exception. How we'll handle these type of exceptions? So this is one of the powerful mechanism to handle the runtime errors. So the normal flow of the application can be maintained. We will see one example. See, the advantage with the exception handling is nothing but to maintain the normal flow of execution. To maintain the normal flow of the execution, an exception normally disrupts the normal flow of the application. That is why we need to handle the exception. How we'll handle the exception from the normal flow? See, the example is here we are having 10 statements. Statement 1, statement 2, statement. Whenever an exception occur in the statement 5, so here the normal flow of execution will stop. When exception occur at the statement 5, it will terminate there itself and the remaining statement will not be executed in the normal programming. But how we'll handle these type of exception? Whenever an exception occur at this place, the normal flow of application will not stop. That is nothing but will handle these type of exceptions. So the remaining statements will also be executed by using the exception handling. That is nothing but by using some keywords, will handle these exceptions. To continue from the normal flow of execution, we handle the exceptions. Here, the statement 1, 3, 4, up to 5 statements, it will be executed. When the statement 5 comes, the exception is occurred in this place. So it will terminate there itself. The remaining statements will not be whatever the remaining statements in a program, it consists of 100 lines of code. So this code is important. So whenever exception occurs at this place, this important code will not be executed. To execute whatever the remaining statements that are there in the program, we'll handle these type of exceptions by using some of the keywords. See, the hierarchy for the Java exception class. This is the hierarchy. So java.lang package. This is one lang package. In this throwable class is the root class for all the exception classes. Throwable class is the main class for all the exception classes. So in this Java hierarchy, that is inherited by two subclasses. Throwable class is a parent class for all the exception. It is the main class. It consists of two subclasses. One is exception and another thing is the error. So this is the hierarchy of the Java exception class. Throwable class is the main class and the two subclasses for this throwable is exception as well as error. So exception. Exception is nothing but what are the different types of exception? When abnormal condition is occurred in a program, we are calling it as an exception. So what are the different exceptions we are having is IO exception, input output exception, SQL exception, class not found exception, runtime exception. These are the exceptions. And the errors. Errors are nothing but stack overflow error, virtual machine error, memory out of error. So these are the different types of errors. So in these runtime exceptions, we are having different names: arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, number pointer exception, index out of bound exceptions, array index out of bound, string index out of bound. So these are the different types of exceptions we are having. So errors are nothing but stack overflow error, virtual machine error, out of memory error. So these are the errors. So the main class is a throwable class. From this throwable class, we are dividing the exceptions into subclasses. One is error and another thing is the exception. These are the different types of exception. We are having checked exceptions as well as unchecked exceptions. So what are the checked exceptions and what are the unchecked exceptions will be seen here. So this is the hierarchy for the Java exception classes. This is a root class and these are the two subclasses in the exception hierarchy. So next is different types of exceptions. We have different types of exceptions. Mainly we are having two types of exceptions. One is checked exception and another thing is unchecked exception. So the error, an error is considered as an unchecked exception. There are three types of exceptions. One is checked exception, unchecked exception, and the error. Checked exceptions are nothing but that is checked by the compiler. Unchecked exceptions are nothing but that is checked at runtime. Error is nothing but it is an abnormal flow. We are calling it as an error. So these are the different types of error. That is SQL error, memory out of error. These type of errors we are calling it as an error. The checked exception means nothing but that is checked at the compile time only. Unchecked exceptions is nothing but when the abnormal condition is occurred at runtime, that type of errors will be handled by using unchecked exception. Next, checked exception. The classes that directly inherit the throwable class except runtime exceptions and errors are known as checked exceptions. For example, we have seen IO exception, SQL exception, etc. checked exception. That means that will be checked at the compile time. So throwable class is the main class except the runtime exceptions. What are the runtime exceptions that are nothing but unchecked exceptions? We are calling it as an checked exceptions. Next is unchecked exceptions. The classes that inherited the runtime exceptions, we are calling it as an unchecked exceptions. So in the diagram, we have seen the unchecked exceptions are nothing but arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, array index out of bound exception. So all these things comes under unchecked exceptions. That means these are not checked at the compile time. When these type of exceptions is occurred, the normal flow of the execution will stop. So to handle that normal flow of execution in the program, we'll be using this exception handling concept. So these can be checked at runtime. So how will we handle these exceptions? We'll see in further. Next is error. Error is nothing but irrecoverable. We said that in the diagram, out of memory error, virtual machine error, assertion error, all these things are errors. So we have different three types of exceptions. One is checked exceptions, which is checked at the compile time. Unchecked exception, that is not checked at the compile time, that is checked at the runtime. So the unchecked exceptions, we are having arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, array index out of bound exception. These type of exceptions, we are calling it as unchecked exception. And the error is nothing but it's an irrecoverable things in a program. Some errors, out of memory errors, virtual machine error, assertion error. These type of errors, we are calling it as an error. So these are the different types of errors. Next. So Java exception keywords. In Java, we have 5 types of keywords that are used to handle this exception. Whenever the normal flow of execution is terminated, at that time by using these keywords, we'll handle the exception. So we have 5 keywords that are used to handle this exception. The first one is try keyword. What is the use of try keyword? And next keyword is catch. Finally, throws. So these are the different keywords that are used to handle the exceptions in a program. So first keyword is the try keyword. The try keyword is used to specify a block where we should place an exception code. This means we can't use try block alone. The try block must be followed with either catch or finally block. So try block is nothing but whatever the doubtful code we are having in our program, that doubtful code will be kept in the try block. That try block will not be alone to be executed. It should be executed compulsory with the catch block or finally blocks. So the try block cannot alone be executed. It must be followed with either catch or it should be followed with finally block. So in the try block, we'll be keeping all the doubtful code will be kept in the try block. Next, what is the use of catch block? Catch block is used to handle the exceptions. It must be preceded by the try block, which means we cannot use catch block alone. It should be followed by finally block later. So next, catch block. Whatever the doubtful code that is kept in the try block, that will be handled by the catch block. Immediately after the try block, we should keep the catch block. So whatever the exception that is there in the try block, immediately it will be catched by the catch block. So the catch block in a program singly, we can't use catch block. It should be followed by the finally block. Next is the finally block. Finally block is nothing but it is used to execute the necessary code of the program. It is executed whether an exception is handled or not. In a program, whether an exception is occurred or not, the finally block will be executed compulsory in a program. Next is a throw keyword. Throw is the keyword that is used to throw an exception. We are throwing an exception explicitly. We are throwing the exception in the program. That is the use of throw keyword. And next is a throws keyword. And the throws keyword is used to declare exception. We'll declare the exception in the method signature. It specified that there may be occur in an exception in the method. It does not throw an exception. It will always used with the method signature. So we'll be seeing later about this throw and throws and finally keyword. So first we'll be seeing what is a try block and what is the catch block. These are the 5 keywords that is used in the exception handling. By using these 5 keywords, we'll handle the exceptions. So first is a try block. Try block is nothing but whatever the doubtful code that is there in our program, we'll be keeping that doubtful code in the try block, and that doubtful code is handled by using the immediate of the catch block. So the catch block will catch the exception that is thrown by the try block. So first we'll see try and catch blocks. So this is the example of the exception programming. So public class Java exception example is nothing but this is the name of the class. This is the main method, public static void main. So here we are using the try block. Try block, in this try block, we are keeping the code that may raise an exception. So we have seen the different exception names, arithmetic exception, null pointer exception. So we'll be seeing detail about that exception. So in this try block, the code that may raise an exception, whatever the code that is raising an exception, the doubtful code will be keeping in this try block. So this is an exception. Division by 0 is one type of exception. This is handled at runtime. So immediately after this try block, we'll be using the catch block. The syntax for the catch block is catch and the type of the exception. What type of exceptions we are using here, that exception name we'll be using in the catch block. So immediately catch block will be catching that exception. System.out.println E is nothing but the type of the exception. What type of exceptions we are using, that exception name will be displayed. Next, here the code. So this is a simple Java program. Java exception example is the name of the class name. So how we'll run this, compile this program and run this program is Java C file name .java. Java C, the file name is Java exception example .java. So that is the compilation process. For running the process, Java and file name. so that we can run the program. So this is a try block. In this block, whatever the doubtful code is there, we'll be keeping all the doubtful code in this try block. Immediately after the try block, the catch block will be kept. In this catch block, we'll be using the type of the exceptions. We can have not only single catch statements. For one try block, we can have multiple catch statements. We can use multiple catch statements in the program. Here, we kept only one exceptions. For this one exceptions, we are catching by using catch statement, that is the type of the exception. Again, also we can write here the catch statement, null pointer exceptions, catch at the null pointer exception, array index out of bound exception. Like that, we can keep multiple catch statements also. So based on the type of exception, it will catch that particular exceptions. If you are using arithmetic exceptions, means it will catch this exception. In this try block, if you use a null pointer exception, means it will catch that null pointer exception. So what are these type of exceptions? So this is the basic example of the try and catch block. So this arithmetic exception, null pointer exceptions, all these things are nothing but different types of exceptions that are nothing but unchecked exception, that is checked at the compile time. So these exceptions, first is arithmetic exception. What is the name? Arithmetic exception is nothing but if you divide any number by 0, there occurs an arithmetic exception. That is nothing but this. The variable int a is equal to 50 by 0. If we divide any number by 0, that we are calling it as an arithmetic exception. Next is a null pointer exception. The name null pointer exception is nothing but if we have any null value in any variable, whenever we are performing any operations on that particular variable, we are using the variable as null, means it will throw the null pointer exception. Whenever we are dividing the number by 0, at that time it will throw arithmetic exceptions. When the variable is declared as a null, then it throws a null pointer exception like this. System.out.println s.length of s.length. But the s is the, we have given s as null. So at this time, we throws null pointer exception. When the variable is declared as null, whenever performing some operations, at that time it will throw null pointer exception. Next is a number format exception. When this number format exception will occur, if the formatting any of any variable or number is mismatched, it may result in the number format exceptions. Suppose we have string variable that has some characters. Converting that string variables in digit, it will cause the number format exceptions. See this, the string s is equal to, we have given quotation a, b, c. So we are using the method as integer dot parse int. We are using integer, but we have given the string. So at that time, it will throw number format exceptions. Variable in place of variable, we have given the string. In place of number variable, we have given the string so that it will mismatch. It results into number format exceptions. Here, string s, here we are giving as a s as a b, c string. But we are asking, we are declaring the operation and we are performing the operation as integer dot parse int. Means we are taking the integer variable, but we have given the string. At these type of things, we will throw an exception as number format exception. Next is array index out of bound exceptions. Array index out of bound exception is nothing but when an array exceeds its size. Array exceeds its size, at that time, it will throw an array index out of bound exception. There may be other reason also that occurs at array index out of bound exception. See this. In A, here we are declaring the size of the array as 5. But we are using array of 10 equal to 15. The size we have declared is 5 and we are using as 10. So at this time, it will throw an exception as array index out of bound exceptions. So in a program, these are all nothing but unchecked exceptions. These are the different types of exceptions that will be handled in the exception handling by using this try catch block. So arithmetic is nothing but whenever we are dividing the number by 0, at that time we'll cause that arithmetic exceptions. Next, null pointer exception is nothing but whenever we are declaring the variable as a null and performing some operations on that particular variable, it throws null pointer exception. Next, number format exception is nothing but if the formatting of any variable or number is mismatched, means we are asking integer and we have given the string. At that time, it will throw number format exception. Next, array index out of bound exception is nothing but when an array exceeds its size, it throws array index out of bound exceptions. So these are the different types of exceptions, unchecked exceptions. So in the program, we have seen like this. See, here when the number variable is declared, it is divided by 0. These type of exception, we are calling it as arithmetic exception. Suppose if you have given the string variable null in catch block, you can have multiple catch back. Not only one catch, you can use multiple catch. Here we can write catch and null pointer exception. Suppose if in the try block, the code we are having as a null pointer exception. We have declared the variable as null and we are calling the length of the string. At that time, it will throw null pointer exception. So here we can write catch of null pointer exception. So it will immediately, it will go to this catch block. So based on the type of the exception, it will catch the exception. In the try block, all the doubtful code will be kept in the try block. Immediately we are having the catch block. The catch block will catch that exception that is followed by the try block. In this program, if you use finally block means, even though the exception is occurred or not, compulsory the finally block will be executed. That is the try catch. We can have multiple catch blocks in the single try. But these try cannot alone be used in the program without the catch pro. That is the use of try catch block. So these are the different types of unchecked exceptions. We'll handle these unchecked exceptions at runtime. Next keyword we are using as a throw and throws keyword. So what is a throw keyword? Throw is a keyword in exception handling that will throw an exception explicitly. Explicitly, we are throwing the exception from a method or a block. From a method or a block of code, we will be throwing the exceptions. Whereas throws keyword, what is the use of throw and difference between throw and throws keyword is nothing but explicitly we are throwing the exceptions in the for a method or a block of code. Whereas throws keyword is used in the signature of the method. Signature of the method, we are using the throws keyword. So that is the difference between throw and throws keyword. See in this program, public class, name of the class, we have defined the user defined method which throws arithmetic exception. See, this is a method. Static void method. Here we are throwing an exception. Throws arithmetic exception. For the method signature, we are using this. So this is the method signature. We are using throws arithmetic exception. That is throws keyword. For this method signature, we are throwing an exception like this. See, here throw new arithmetic exception. That is nothing but we are throwing the exception explicitly. We are throwing the exception for the method or a method block. For this method or a method block explicitly, we are throwing the exception like this. That is nothing but throws keyword. So throw is nothing but explicitly we are throwing the exception like this. Explicitly we are throwing the exception. And the throws is nothing but it is used for the method signature. For the method signature, we are throwing the exception. We can also throw an exception here also for the method signature. So here, see this. Throw new arithmetic exceptions. We are throwing an exception. Next, this is the main method. Here we are using try method. Method is nothing but here it goes. Again, it is throws arithmetic exceptions. Again, it comes to here. After this, it will catch the exception. The type of the exception is arithmetic exception. Here, in place of arithmetic exception, if you write the exception E means, it will give the type of the exception also because exception class is the throwable class is the main class for all the exceptions. So exception, if you mention the exception means the type of the exceptions will be given. So that is the difference between throw and throws keyword. Next is the final keyword. So here we are using the term final, finally, and finalize. These are also the three keywords that are used in the Java exception handling. So first of all, what is the final keyword? So each keyword has a different functionality. What is the difference between the final keyword, finally, and finalize? So final is nothing but it's an access modifiers. We have different access modifiers in our Java programming. So in the exception handling, we are using the final access modifier. What are the different access modifiers? We are having public, private, protected. All these things are also access specifiers. So the access specifier private means it is accessed within that particular class only. Public means it can be accessed throughout the class. Protected means we are using within the packages. At that time, we are using the protected keyword. So these are the different access modifiers. So one of the access modifier is a final keyword that is used in the exception handling. Next, finally block. What is the use of finally block in exception handling, and what is the finalize the method of the object class? First, we'll be seeing what is a final keyword. The final keyword, it is an access specified. So it is used to apply some restrictions on a class, method, or a variable. We can use this final keyword on class, method, as well as variables. So if we apply the final keyword for a class, what will happen? If we apply the final keyword for a method, what will happen? And if we apply the final keyword for the variable, what will happen? So the final access modifier, whenever we are using these final keyword for these class, method, and variable, what will happen? Once we declare the final variable, if we declare the variable as final means it is constant. It cannot be modified. So if you are using the final keyword for the variable means it is constant. We cannot modify the variable. That is the final keyword. Next, final method. If you are using the final keyword for a method, means it cannot be overridden by the subclass. So we are having two classes. One is the superclass and subclass. So we cannot overridden. We cannot inherit the things from the superclass. So final, whenever we are applying the method as final means it cannot be overridden by the subclass. Next, final class. Whenever we are applying the final keyword for the class, it cannot be inherited. We cannot inherit that class. Inheriting is nothing but we cannot acquire the properties from the parent to the child. If you are declaring the class as final means we cannot inherit anything. Means it is fixed. We cannot inherit anything for the particular. These are the three things for a class, method, and a variable, how we are applying this final keyword. This is one of the exception handling keyword that is used in the for the class, method, as well as variable. If we declare the class as final means we cannot inherit that particular class. If we declare the method as final means it cannot be overridden. Next, if we declare the variable as final means it cannot be modified, means it will be declared as constant. We cannot change the value of that particular variable. That is the use of final keyword. Next is the finally. Finally is nothing but it's a block in the exception handling. Finally block in the exception handling to execute the important code. Whatever the important code that is there, we'll be keeping that important code in the finally block. Whether then exception is occurred in the try block or not, finally block will be executed compulsory. If the exception is there in the try block means that will be catched by the catch block and last finally block will be executed. If exception is there or not in the program, compulsory the finally block will be executed in our program. Next, finalize. What is the use of finalize? It is a method. It is used to clean up the processing. That is nothing but it will deallocate the memory. When just before the object is garbage collected, it will clean up the memory. That time we'll be using the finalize method. So this is the difference between final, finally, and finalize keywords. So we have seen the 5 keywords. One is try, catch, throw, throws, and finally. So these are the 5 keywords that are used in the Java programming. One is try. Try is nothing but whatever the doubtful code is there, that doubtful code will be kept in the try block. Next, catch block. Immediately after the try block, the catch block will be there. Whatever the exception that is raised in the try block, that will be catched by the catch block. That is the use of catch block. We can have multiple catch blocks. Next is the throw and throws keyword. Throw is the keyword, that is we are throwing an exception. Explicitly, we are throwing an exception in a program. Next is the throws keyword. Throws keyword is nothing but that throws keyword, it is used for the method signature block. We are using the throws keyword. Next, finally block is nothing but whether an exception is occurred or not, the finally block will be executed compulsory. That is nothing but whatever the important code that should be executed compulsory, that code will be kept in the finally block. That is the use of these keywords, 5 keywords. So by using these 5 keywords, we can handle the exception. That is nothing but abnormal condition. Whenever abnormal condition is occurred, the normal flow of the execution will stop there itself. To continue the remaining statements in the program, we'll be using this exception handling concept and we'll handle the exception when we can execute the remaining lines of codes in our program. And the next, another topic is Java custom exceptions. So we have custom exception is nothing but user-defined exceptions. We can create our own exceptions that are derived class exceptions. We can create our own exception. That exception, we are calling it as custom exceptions or the user-defined exceptions. That is used to customize the exceptions according to the user needs. According to the user needs, we can create our own exception. That is user-defined exceptions or the custom exceptions. We are calling it as a custom exception. So why we are using this custom exception is nothing but in Java exceptions, we have covered all the general types of exception that is occurred in our programming. Sometimes we need to create our own exceptions. So what are the rules to create our own exception is nothing but to catch and provide some specific treatment to a subset of existing Java exceptions. That is nothing but for business logic exceptions. There are some type of exception that is related to business logic and the workflow. It is useful for the application users or the developers to understand the exact problem, what the problem it is. So they are creating their own exceptions in their program and they are using the exceptions. So in order to create the custom exception, we need to extend the exception class that belongs to java.lang package. So in the previous program, just we have given the class and the name of the class. We are not extending anything from the exception class. So the exception class is the main class. From that exception class, we can use the custom exceptions. That exception class will be available in the java.lang package. In these packages, all the exception class will be available. So this exception class is nothing but the throwable is the main class for all the exception classes. So whenever we are creating the custom exceptions, at that time, it should be extended from the exception class that is there in the throwable class. So this exception class will be available in the java.lang package. So see this example. Class my custom exception. This is my user-defined exception name. Whenever we are creating the user-defined exception, at that time, it should extend from the exception class. Compulsory, it should extend. So in the previous example, we have seen that just public class Java exception. We are not extending anything from the exception class. Just we are writing the name of the class. But here, whenever we are creating the user-defined exception, at that time, compulsory, we need to extend that from the exception class. So this exception class, it is available in the java.lang packages. So this is the custom exception, that is user-defined exception. The name of the exception is my custom, or you can create any name. User-defined exception. You are creating your user-defined exception. Next, public class, text custom exception. Here is the main method, public static void main. Here we are throwing the exception. Throw an object of the user-defined exception. My custom exception. We are throwing a exception. Explicitly, we are throwing the exception and it is catched by the catch block. EX is nothing but the type of the exception. What type of exception it is throwing. Next, for the exception, EX dot get message. That is nothing but whatever the message we are getting, we'll be giving the message. Rest of the code will be executed. So this is nothing but custom exceptions. We are creating our user-defined own exception. At that time, compulsory, it should extend from the exception class. So that is the use of the custom exception. We need to extend the exception class that will be available in the java.lang package. So whenever the business logic exceptions will be there, at that time, it will be useful for the developers or the users to understand what is the exact problem. At that time, we are using these custom exceptions. So this is the exception handling. So what is an exception? What is an error? How we'll handle that exception? What are the keywords that are used in the exception handling? By using that keywords, how we are handling the exception. That is how we are handling the abnormal flow of execution in the program by using different keywords. That is the topic in of exception handling. Thank you.